Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series for our Arsenal All or Nothing review. I'm very happy to be finally joining you by talking about it. I've really avoided talking about it a lot on the channel because I didn't want to spoil stuff for everybody, but I feel like now we're well into Thursday. Everyone's watched it. Let's be real, other than one person who we'll come on to in a second who's pulled a proper Webby, as we've coined it here. But thank you everybody joining us in the chat box. Do drop a like. Do make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. But let's introduce you my panel for the afternoon. First of all, Gooners versus Cancer, the man himself, Magic Mike. How you doing, mate? You doing good, Joel?
Doing well. I see you're starting from west to east, which is the proper way to do it.
I've now got to judge where I think in London our two next guests live to see if I get it right.
Well, one's in North. We know that.
We know one's in North. I've now got to try and guess where our other guest is. We'll see if we get it right. We're gonna go for Mr. Lee Judges. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
Oh, I'm all good. Thank you very much. All good. All good.
Lovely stuff. How's things on the channel? All doing well? Enjoying
yourself?
everything
going great guns at the moment. Everything in the Arsenal world is very, very good.
It is. It's nice. It makes a nice change from the start of last season, of which we're going to have to talk about, of course, with the topic of today's discussion, of course. And I mean, he's going to tell me if I'm right or wrong with going from west to east. It's Raf. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm in southeast, so I think you got it right.
Oh, I think I was right.
Just about, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Lovely stuff. I absolutely no connection at all. It was pure guesswork, but I've got it right, which I'm very happy about indeed. And as I said before, absolutely. Well done to everybody joining us in the chat as well. We're going to be getting plenty of your thoughts on the Amazon documentary, and we're going to kick off with kind of our summarizing feelings, having now watched 90% of it, in some cases, all of the series. Mike, I'll come to you first. How did you find it?
I mean, I knew it would be fascinating, even despite how the season ended. I knew it would be a good watch. It was something that, as the summer went on, as the signings came true, as the process continued to unroll, to where I think the things that were going to be disappointing about the season last season were put into different context a bit. I knew it would be something that wouldn't be as painful as it seemed like it would be right at the end of the moment. Very, very, very edited to. It's as Sophie always says, it's a television show. It's edited. There's characters. There's a beginning. There's a middle. There's a denouement. There's a that's not even an English phrase.
I was going to say that I completely contradicted it.
It's just fancy. That's why I use the bell. There's all sorts of different production elements to it to raise and heighten expectations. There's foreshadowing. We're doing a thing on Rob Holding. Well, maybe he'll score in the next game. Or Eddie Nketiah, about his struggles. Maybe he'll score 97 goals in the last 5 games. So I had trouble getting away from how packaged it was and how kind of, it was a PR thing. It was definitely avoiding some things that were tough, kind of picturing and packaging Arteta in exactly the light that the club wants you to see him in. But beyond that, I still found it fascinating. And, I think that people should have more context to how they evaluate the team's performance, some of the relationships they have with players, some of the assumptions they make about what happens behind the scenes, now that we've seen at least what the cameras allowed us to see.
Indeed. Lee, did you find that to be the case? Did you feel as though you were watching something that wasn't necessarily raw, but what they wanted us to see?
No, I agree slightly with Mike, and then other things I don't. I think, sometimes when it was in the dressing room, like being in that environment, that's what it's like. I thought Arteta come across really, really well, a caring manager that you could want to play for, but also if you knew you'd done things wrong, he was going to let you know. Thought that was good. I think when I look back, I never actually see the whole of the Tottenham one, but that documentary put Danny Rose and Dele Alli in a real bad light, and I think from that moment on, their careers have gone downhill from that moment. They didn't do that with Arsenal, so when there weren't no editing going on in there, they just, whether they let them lambs to the slaughter or whatever. Even with the Aubameyang thing, I think they kept that out so that he didn't really look like a bad person, didn't reveal anything. So I get what Mike's saying there. I think that from that point of view, I felt that Arsenal done well there, where they protected most of their players. Where I felt that Tottenham didn't, particularly with Danny Rose and Dele Alli. I watched the last episode. I thought it was a fascinating episode. You know, I had tears in my eyes when Saka goes and sees that little kid. You know,
the last episode you watched, you mean? Not
yeah,
the
you
last
mean the
episode.
second to last episode, Lee?
Yeah, the last episode that I watched. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? You know, when he sat there, you know, like the kid wrote him a letter and he's gone and see him and all that. That just showed a fantastic side. Yeah, it's all PR stuff, we know, but it was still fantastic to see and watch. And you know, like the great thing was, you know, how they went about the Chelsea game, how they looked after that game, and then went on that run again. But ultimately, I thought it was really, really good. I can't watch the last episode. I admit I can't, because I know what's coming. Look, I know people might think I'm silly at this moment. I will get to watch it at some stage, but I don't want to be reminded of that Tottenham performance. I don't want to be reminded of that going to that game again. Like, you know, it's probably one of the worst times I've, you know, like, let's be honest, we've never been stuffed by Spurs, like in your lifetime, guys. You know what I mean? They have done in my lifetime. We lost there 5-0 once upon a time, which I was there.
You think I am?
Well, I don't know if you remember it or not, Mike. But anyway, like, I was there that day, and I was there at this one here. It was humiliating, and I don't want to go through that again at this moment in time. I think it's a good there's a real good feel factor around the Arsenal at the moment, and I want to keep my feel good factor going at the moment, like, you know. But I one thing that it does emphasise to me, and I think that it's a real poignant thing, is as good as Mikel or bad as Mikel is and whatever. Oh, by the way, I think he's come across it very, very well. I think he's a lot. You can't help but like him. It still comes down to players. You know what I mean? Like, still comes down to, you know, how good your players are. And when he gets the good players, then maybe they get that connection. I don't know.
Maybe he's got the good players. Maybe this season will show it. We'll have to wait and see. Raf, how did you feel about the series? Did you enjoy it? I mean, there's been two others, of course, with Man City and Spurs being covered as well. How did you feel kind of this ranked in terms of the other ones as well?
I mean, in terms of, to be honest, I enjoyed it. I think that it put something in the perspective. I can understand what Mike's saying in regards to, it's definitely edited. Like, there was definitely, you could tell when there was certain situations where they wanted to pull on certain emotions, and, you know, similarly to what you said, Holding's in it, then all of a sudden he scores that goal, and it's all kind of, even the cameras are pointed towards it. Like, you could see that there was some elements of it that were to pull and like to bring out certain emotions in you. But I felt that ultimately it did kind of convey a togetherness that I don't know if I necessarily thought there was, especially like as it progressed and as you kind of see how, I think mainly even how Josh and Vinay and Edu kind of were together with Arteta. I think that came out really, really strongly, even in these dark times. I remember in one of the first episodes, and Josh kind of put his arm around Arteta a little bit and was like, I know that you're struggling a bit, but don't, like, we've got belief in you. And I kind of felt like, okay, that's kind of what we want. Like, you know, like, I think Lee, you spoke about the Tottenham one. And to me, it was quite, I felt like it was quite evident of the type of manager Jose is compared to the type of manager or the type of ethos that Arteta is trying to bring, in terms of, it felt very much like, I'm the main man with Jose. It's the players' fault. I'm going to dig out Danny Rose. I'm going to make players look bad. I'm going to but it's about me getting the best out of this terrible situation of in terms of a club where Arteta looked very much like, this is kind of unity. And this is kind of, we're trying to like build like this thing where we're all in it together. And I felt like that's what kind of came across for me. And I think as a fan, it makes you feel a little bit more like, all right, do you know what? I may be able to give them a bit more grace in certain situations, or at least I can understand that I wasn't the only one that was pissed off after we lost. Like the Nottingham Forest, when I lose a duel, I'm upset.
Everyone's saying duel now. It's
duel.
Just, that's what it is.
It took me 5 weeks to figure out what he was actually saying.
Yeah, but it's like, but at least like he was angry. Like, even I think there was a game, was it the Villa game or the West Ham game? And I remember the game clearly, where we were like, we kind of dropped off, and it was like, has he told him to just kind of sit back after the game? And clearly by halftime, you could see that he didn't. So it's like, again, it makes you think, well, at least, you know, these things and the questions that I've kind of asked of him and I've asked of the team sometimes, like, is it a mental thing? Is it just, you know, psychologically they dropped off because they were winning and they wanted to hold on to the lead? Was it complacency? But at least I know it's not the manager telling them, all right, we've got a 1-0, let's just sit behind the ball and then, you know.
Yeah, I mean that narrative is absurd, and I think that should just be blown out of the water. It is 100%. Fascinating though. There were instances where we kind of had a bad stretch. I mean, I think it was the Forest game where Arteta had been in isolation,
really
but he had been in isolation, but he had watched the practice, and he was like, that was a crap practice.
Yeah,
and carried it into the game.
He separated it, didn't he? He was like, there was like 4 players that really want to be here. There's like the most of you are just like training because you have to, and then the rest are just like they're just turning up.
And then the other stretches of the season, one of which we didn't really see that much. Well, we saw the Everton game and the United game, but then the other stretch was obviously the one where my first bad stretch of games in London, the Palace, Brighton, Southampton thing, where he seemed to think that the team, I mean, there was nothing visible that he said, you know, was missing with that team. They just went out and crapped the bed for no reason.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it isn't just all about the coach sometimes. Yeah. And the players were on each other over that. I mean, it's sometimes they just, a young team with kind of developing psyches, I guess, is gonna have those games. And even Man City lost to Norwich a few years ago out of the blue. I don't know why they did that, how they did that, but you know, there's just stuff sometimes that happens where the unit of men just don't click on a particular day, and it's hard to dig out of that.
Yeah, Lee, I mean, when you look at some of the low moments, I know that you've obviously not seen the final episode, but there were some really tough periods in the, as Mike brought up, the Nottingham Forest game, where you had a lot of kids in that team, you know, because a lot of the first team players weren't available. There was a lot of kids on the bench. Patino played that game and he really went in. I mean, did you, from what you've seen of Arteta before the documentary, from what we've seen on the touchline, from what we've seen in interviews, from what we've seen in press conferences, did you expect that? Were you surprised when you saw those kind of emotions and hardness from him?
No, not really, because I think that's what it does to you. I think, you know, there's a method to everything that he does. He knows that for all that part of the season, he cannot be going in there screaming and shouting, but he also can't be going in there trying to be like their friend and all that, like trying to. There's so many things you have to do. Some of those things, like, listen, I've been in coaching and all that, like, and things like that. Some of them are all premeditated, like, you know, right, this is the one where you're going to have to go in there and give them a rollicking, like, you know. I've been there when you're going in at half time and you're talking to your coaches and you go, right, do I rollick them now? Yeah, this is the time. This is not the time, you know. So it's all calculated to a certain point of view, like, you know. But I actually, I'm going to be really honest. Whether you think Arteta is the right man for the job, that's still in question. Whatever you cannot help but like him. The way he's come across, I'm thinking, do you know what? Yeah, if I was a young player, I wouldn't mind being part of what he's doing, the way he's playing and all that. Like, there's a thing of being very expressful when you play. He wants you to play and all that, but he wants you to do it in the right ways and things like that. And I think that, you know, I can see now why people are sort of saying they're looking up to him. Some of the tactics and some of the talking that he does. But I've enjoyed I don't care what anybody says. You know what I mean? Like, I loved it that he come in after that game and had a go against Norwich Forest. You know why? Because I was as pissed off as he was on that day. You know what I mean? Like, you know, got to go home and travel home after that. Also, on other games, I thought it was fantastic. The Brighton one, I don't know if you remember when he come back in at Brighton, he had a go but didn't have a go. But the thing he emphasised was, you know, we wasn't at it at the start of the game. We was not on it, and that's what cost us. And you know what I mean? How many times you walked out of the ground going, why didn't we start off like we did when we went 1-0 down and things like that? So he was telling them. I think the other one was in the Everton game when we was 1-0 up at half time. And he said, if you don't pull your pants up here, we will get done. As simple as that. And they didn't, you know, and he come back in and I thought it was a fantastic thing he said. If I speak now, I'm going to regret it. So I will talk to you when I've calmed down. And that is because realistically, he's giving out the instructions and they're not listening. Now, I think there is a little bit of naivety in their youth and whatever, but also that is he's looking at that and he's going, right, well, he's going to be good enough. He ain't. I've got to get so-and-so, such and such. And that's why I think this season is going to be so much better because he's got better players now to emphasise some of the things that he was trying to implement. Now we'll get over and hopefully we'll be a better side. But I thought it was a fascinating thing from that point of view. And I have to say, I'm more in awe. Look, I was fortunate enough to meet Mikel after the Wolves game, just only for a brief minute. And you could tell he's a nice guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, you don't want to criticise him because he's a nice guy. But ultimately, it's still all of this stuff that he's doing. He's still got to get results. You know, at the end of the day, I think there is a ruthless streak in him, and he has got to make sure that comes out when we're doing it, when we're going through this season. Because if he doesn't, you know, he will fall on his sword. And I don't want him to fall on his sword because he just seems like a really nice guy. But I do like the way he's got the culture in there. And also, one thing got to quickly mention, I love it that he includes the fans in some of his team talks. They're out there. They've got energy. You've got to get them up and all that. So when I look at it and go, oh, is there, you know, what is this? Is that the fans thing? Is it just a PR thing? It proved to me that it wasn't. He wants the fans there, get them energized, get them in. That's great that you feel like that when he's doing his team talks, you know, you've got to go out there for the fans and do it for the fans. So I think that there's some very, very good things that have come of it from his point of view.
And that was a constant theme for him during the summer tour as well. Just the fans, the supporters, you know, you know, he does command a room. I mean, I had the opportunity to be one of the people that were interviewing him a lot of times. And it's just, you know, I'm not going to make him out to be like some sort of like godlike figure where you're like entranced and like early Arsene Wenger probably was, where everyone's just sitting there in rapture. But I mean, he's engaging. He looks you in the eye. He does have a connection to the fans. The way he answered the question about Maria, I mean, that for me, from a personal level, I've always rooted for him because he's the manager of Arsenal Football Club, not because he's Mikel Arteta, not because of who he is or who he isn't, but because of what job he has, what role he has. After this summer, and boy, you know, pushed further by this. I tried to say buoyed, be whatever that word is, but pushed further by this. Exactly, Rob. Push forward by this series. I mean, I really do like the guy. I want him to succeed. That's not going to keep me, like, you know, rooting for him when he's lost the team in 5 years or whatever. I mean, whatever that when that happens, I'll know. But he is a likable guy. I think we can agree he did a little bit more and he learned a little bit more from Pep Guardiola than just how to move cones around.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
You can see Pep in him.
So disrespectful.
And just even on that. Like, I know obviously people had a bit of fun with the whole bringing the sound system onto the training ground and a couple of the wacky ideas and things. I personally kind of looked at that in a different way. It's like, at least he's trying something. Like, even with those things, it's like I'm trying to make them understand what it means, because when you actually get into that situation, you're going to realize that, wow, some of these players, I've never been in this type of situation before. Like the Nuno Tavares of this world, or Lokongas. Like, you can see Anfield, but when you're playing, when you hear the crowd, when they start to get on top, and ultimately, let's be honest, that's what happened. The crowd got involved, and because it was a pretty even game up until Arteta kind of lost his head with Klopp. The crowd got involved. They score a goal. We make a mistake. They score a goal, and then it just got on top of us. And I think in all of the things that he was trying to do, I think he was trying to get into the psyche of the players and make them understand what it means, not only to play for Arsenal, but to be in this position, to be consistent, and, like, you know, to have a standard. Because let's be honest, I think the standard amongst our players has dropped, not just in the level of performance, but the standard of, like, you actually play for Arsenal. Like, he looks like, and he was at I think there was a bit of, apart from the terrible results that we've had off and on, that he looked like he was part of the team where he would have realized, you know what it's like to actually play for Arsenal. Like, do you know what a privilege? Like, he might have been in his playing time so privileged to play for Arsenal. And it's like, I don't know if the standard had gone as a club or just between the players, or it's just a kind of a relaxed, like,
when he
feeling
signed with
amongst
Arsenal,
the players.
when he signed with Arsenal, there were still players in the club who really could translate the privilege that it was to play for Arsenal.
Exactly.
The history of the club. And so many of the players that we had, you know, in the last couple, well, the players that we've had for the last 5 seasons don't have that connection, and Arteta has to be that connection. It's not in the dressing room. I mean, you could say Xhaka, you could say El Neni, maybe Holding, but like, you know, their kind of generational parents in the club were guys like Alexis Sanchez and you know, and Aaron Ramsey and those folks. So I mean, there's been a loss of that kind of hand me down of passion and what it means to play for this football club. And I think that is, you know, when people talk about bringing in Ancelotti or even Jose Mourinho at times, or, you know, what we needed was someone with Arsenal DNA, even if it wasn't like the greatest, you know, even if it wasn't an Invincible, even if it wasn't Thierry, or even if it wasn't Vieira,
needed to be someone that
needed to be somebody who understood what it meant to play for this club, and that's, I think, Arteta's biggest contribution of all.
One other thing I just remember, which was a great point, was I think that because he's a young manager, he can connect with the players as well. Like, for instance, that game against Anfield, when I thought it was a fantastic thing that he said. He said, as a player, I lost my bottle one game, and it was this game. And what he was basically telling everybody there is that, you know, we're humans. Everybody can have that sort of thing. So don't beat yourself up about it. Don't go hiding. I've done it, so I can get it. And I thought that was a fantastic thing. The other thing I would like to say is that I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I've always had a big beef with his backroom staff. A big beef with them, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, all of a sudden, though, watching this documentary, I've kind of took to all of them.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Carlos Cuesta's a really interesting character, isn't he?
He's been really good, like, you know. But some of those one-to-ones.
What was your big beef, by the way? And whose plate
did you feel as though they were yes men and they weren't really questioning?
Yeah, I did. I did feel that they were like nodding donkeys at times, and you know, looking at balls and looking at things and all that. Like, I remember one of them sitting there looking at his iPad. I'm going, look at the pitch, not the iPad. You know what I mean? Like, you can see what I'm seeing, or see what we're all seeing. Like, you know what I mean? But they come over really, really well, really good, and I quite like that. The only thing that I would, you know, like, I don't know how you guys feel about it. There was some one-on-one situation. Wouldn't it have been great if you had Sol Campbell in there doing that one-to-one, or you know, Dennis Bergkamp saying the one-to-ones? And I know the coaches and all that. I'm not knocking that, but I just think that sometimes, you know, you got Tony Adams telling it, you know, Ben White how to improve or something like that. I just think if we could get a few more Arsenal men in there, that'd be fantastic. But I have to say, I look at the coaching staff now in a different light. I used to hate them. I'm going to say it. I hate them.
No, I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean. I felt like I didn't hate them, but I just felt like, isn't someone else gonna like say anything or like do anything? Is it?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Is it only when we get a set piece and everyone hugs the set piece guy that
Lee was throwing eggs at their houses and stuff? He hated them so much.
Yeah,
I put a poll in the chat box as well. I'll just break it on from what you said about Arteta, you know, and the question was, did All or Nothing make you warm to the manager more or less? 70% of you have said more, 5% have said less, and 26% have said unchanged as to how they feel about Arteta. So overwhelmingly, you know, it seems to do that. And that's where I think it's important to then balance the argument. There was a comment in Mike earlier on from Gavin, who said it was here we go. It was an 8-episode propaganda piece. It was an embarrassment as a fan. It's the opposite view. You know, we've all been pretty positive about things. Do you see the argument that this was edited to make Arteta and the club look good? Yeah,
I mean, of course it was. An embarrassment as a fan, though. I mean, look. The way the season ended was an embarrassment as a fan. I don't think anyone could argue with that.
No,
and you can have different perspective of whether that was an overachievement in the year or a complete collapse and a failure at the end. But to say that the documentary itself was an embarrassment, like if your view of Arsenal Football Club was here, and then you watch the 8 episodes, and now it's down here, and you're worried that you're going to go out and catch banter from your mates who support other clubs. I don't understand how you could be embarrassed over it. I mean, what would you have rather seen? It would have been interesting, but it wouldn't. I don't know, the embarrassment. I mean, that's what television shows are. They're or documentaries.
It would have been fantastic, wouldn't it? I think, and not if we'd have got Champions League at the end of it. I
mean, that would have been a happier ending. I'm pretty sure.
Would have been that would have been great. But
that said, I mean, look, it would have been cringe, difficult television. But would you not have been fascinated in seeing an All or Nothing from the season before? The one where we banished those.
I don't think I would have been able to watch it anywhere near as comfortably.
Not as comfortably, but like
I would have pulled a Lee Judges.
You know what though? I see what you're saying, because I felt it was going to be cringeworthy. I thought it was going to be we was going to get battered and all that, especially when I see the first clips. Pleasantly surprised it wasn't like that from a personal point of view. I only can talk for myself. Yeah, I didn't feel that it was like that. You know what I mean? I didn't think we come out of it bad. Spoken to a couple of fans today, funny enough, doing a Bournemouth review. They've come out and said the same, that they felt that Mikel's come out of it really, really well, and they've enjoyed it. You know, so but listen, everybody's got an opinion, haven't they? And that's if that's how that person feels, then that's fine. But for me personally, I didn't find that.
I think that you're going to get out of it what you put in. Like if you go into it not liking Arteta, you're not going to come out of that having your mind changed. That's why I said the question: have you warmed or not? Because I think if you already like him, you will warm to him. If you don't like him, you won't, because psychologically you will take on the positives. You will see the Anfield speakers, the light bulb, the rubbing the hands together. You'll see that as cringe and as embarrassing because you don't like him. You know, if you like what he does, you'll see it for what it is. You know, that I think that's what you'll see.
And you got to remember as well, like I don't know what it is about Arsenal, but we are like, everyone is quick to want to banter Arsenal. Everyone's quick to want to be like, oh, that's crazy, or oh, how could he do that? Like, I'm sure loads of coaches are doing, or some coaches are trying innovative ideas that don't work. Or similarly, there's issues on the training ground, like the bust up with Lacazette and Cedric. Like, these things clearly happen, but it's, Arsenal. There's that thing with Arsenal, especially on social media. Everyone's quick to just be like, oh, that's banter, or that's crazy. And also with the whole Arteta thing, there's, like you said, there's going to be fans that ultimately just don't like him. So anything he does is going to be like, okay, that's the worst thing he could have done, or that's propaganda, or even the fact that someone's saying it's an 8-piece propaganda piece, in a way, it's because you're looking at it from a perspective that Arteta looks favourable in some aspects. And it's like, whether it is or it isn't, all we can take on it is at least we have a bit more insight on.
Well, and most of these top level football clubs are not going to allow that kind of access.
Exactly.
Because despite what some of the people in the chat are saying, 99% of documentaries are biased and have a natural bias of one thing or another. 100%. Like documentaries about like birds and like walruses and stuff maybe don't, but but they might. It could be about like global warming and stuff.
For the birds, take the walruses.
There is a poorly drawn Arsenal's walrus is my favorite walrus, but the documentaries are not just completely level-headed, looks at the reality of what's going on, especially if you're taking, 20, 30, 40,000 hours and knocking it down to 8. Yeah. That you can't help but have some level of bias and tell a particular story. So, I don't really know what people are expecting out of that, especially for a top level football team to give that level of access, which is why I just would have loved to have seen the season before, because you got the Guendouzi story, you got the Ozil story, you've got all those contracts that they cleared out and then started playing well. You had who was it? ESR coming into the team and being a revelation on Boxing Day. I mean, it would have been a cringe, pain, like a lot of negativity, but I think it would have been fascinating look at behind the scenes, because last season was kind of a roller coaster ride with a happier ending than people were expecting. So, there he is.
Do you think with
I didn't even see him in the chat. I love you, buddy.
With this Mikel Arteta thing, like people genuinely don't like him, because I think there's I'm still not convinced. I think these next 3 games, by the way, will tell me all I think I need to know about Mikel in the next 3 games. But it's never been like a dislike for me. It's like I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be the manager. I really want him to work. And I don't see how you can dislike the man after what you've seen. This is only my opinion. I don't see why you can dislike him. I can understand why you don't rate him or don't think he should be in the job. But to say you dislike him, I think, is a little bit strong, really. I don't see why our Arsenal fans can say they genuinely dislike him.
I think it's, again, some people get, and obviously this is just me talking from, because I'm in a similar boat to you. Like Tom will attest to it. There was times before where I was like, well, I don't personally think he should be in the job anymore.
Raf used to have an Arteta banner on that wall behind
him. It was literally on my forehead as well. No, but you lose 8 out of 13.
Everyone
you lose 8 out of 13. In my opinion, you shouldn't have been at Arsenal. But maybe we're looking at things and saying that he did need a bit longer, and we're starting to see the fruits of the club having faith in him. But I think that what happens with some fans are tied to certain players. Some people felt that the way he handled Guendouzi was wrong. Maybe the way he handled Aubameyang was wrong. Maybe the Saliba debacle, which I had strong views on, was wrong. And then you get a dossier, and people that may dislike that or may not think he's up to the job. I'm in the same camp as you in that I think he seems like a likable guy, and he seems like he loves Arsenal and he wants Arsenal to be where we want him to be. So ultimately, I think that's the main thing for me, and he looks like he's got a plan. Like I think no matter what you can.
Great point. Great point. And the other thing is that which has come across to me, which is just following on to that, is that yes, he loves Arsenal. Yes, he's got all the passion, but that doesn't mean to say that I'm going to give him a free ride on that because of what it's ultimately about getting results. I think it's great that he's got passion for the club. I think it's great that he loves Arsenal, but that ain't enough. Yeah. That ain't enough. You know what I mean? Like he's got to deliver, and I think that was one of the things that I've took out of this. You know what I mean? I do like him. I think that he's got that, but I've heard a lot of people go, "Oh, it's fantastic that he's got passion for Arsenal." What Arsene Wenger didn't, Emery didn't. You know what I mean? Like Terry Neal didn't. You know what I mean? They've all got passion for Arsenal.
That's not an insult. I'm just saying that the Emery wasn't one of those guys who had that level of passion, and that wasn't.
No, it was a job for Emery. That's what it was.
Didn't lead to his failure. It wasn't his fault. You can't.
Well, it may take you a little bit longer. When you go to a club, sometimes it takes you, like a year ain't enough, or a year and a bit ain't enough to fall in love. You know what I mean? As a player as well, you get, and I get what you're saying there. You get special. With all the clubs that I play for, there's more special connections with some than others. You know what I mean? Like that's the way it is. You know what I mean? So I think if he'd have been successful and probably got into the Champions League, that it might have been a little bit different for him. I don't know, but I think one thing that's really, I've got to say this as well, that I like, and I think it has to be said, is that we, as a fan, one thing I don't like about the Cronkies is, I don't care about the money side of it, is that I've had that thing that they don't really care. They are not over here. They don't hurt like me and whatever like that. What I've got now is a manager that I know does care, does hurt when we lose. And I think that I can take consolation and feel a little bit better towards Mikel. That I know that if we don't beat Bournemouth on Saturday, that he's going to be hurting as well. Like, where I feel that before I felt that there were people that didn't care at the club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to be honest, I felt like, especially in the beginning, like the first couple of episodes, it looks like Josh cares a bit as well, to be honest. And I'm not, again, I know that everyone has mixed views on the Cronkies, and I haven't been big Cronky fans over the years, but it's hard to deny that there's been a shift since 2018 when they've
for Josh
taken full ownership.
I think it's important,
Josh.
Raf, to separate them. You know,
but then
Stan I don't think gives a rat's ass about whether.
I think what we do is that we say Stan, but then Stan's the big. I think it's a company, and obviously he's clearly given Josh and Stan similar reigns. How old is Stan? Probably in his 70s now or whatever. Yeah, it's probably unrealistic for him to take over control over every single thing. Clearly, Josh has said, all right, I'm going to handle Arsenal. Maybe Stan's handling the Rams, and they've divided, they're not divided assets, but divided how they're going to control their responsibility. And Josh is involved. So, I mean, it's hard to deny that he's been more involved, and we've seen an uptick in money, an uptick in exposure. He's spoken. How many times has he had interviews and spoken? So I think he has to be the one. I think forget about Stan now to a degree. Like, Josh is clearly the one that is involved in Arsenal from my perspective anyway. And he's at least shown. I
know that Mike's been desperate to cut in on the ownership thing.
Well, I mean,
I can see him. He's like a lion. I've
always had this sense of when I'm like, I look like I'm bursting like constantly, but when it comes to Stan, I mean, I've been saying forget about Stan for 5 years. I mean, because he's never going to change. But we did, Aston told this story. My friend Aston, who was heavily involved in the summer
Mr. Away kit launch.
Yeah, he and he was in the owner's box at the Chelsea's game, at the Chelsea game, at the Orlando game, with the Cronkies, with Vinay and all that. And he said, he finally got to hear Stan talk, and it was, we're all going out for a big dinner when we win the Champions League. like
really? Is that what he said?
Yeah, that was a secondhand quote from Aston. But yeah, Josh is the.
I know that's getting used. Someone's clipping that.
That's cringe.
Yeah. Oh, and I like to add, the extra accent because he has a ranch in Texas. Like, when we win one of them Champions League thingies, we going out to Sizzler. But like, at least he knew what the Champions League was. I mean, he might think that's like the new Super Bowl of soccer. And I said that intentionally.
Well, it is the equivalent, I suppose.
Well, yeah. I mean, Mike said that the FA Cup was, but so yeah. I mean, he wants a franchise that wins, and he's going to bankroll it to the point where he's not throwing money away, and they want to get back to self-sustaining. There's no question about that. But as we've seen from clubs, self-sustaining doesn't mean you don't spend money. It means that you're spending money whilst being successful, which gives you the money to spend. You don't have to do a lot of that. But not to turn it into a financial podcast, Josh is the guy who is talking to Vinay. Stan isn't. Josh is the guy who's talking to Tim Lewis. Stan isn't.
After watching that,
guy who's probably more involved and might even be in London more than people think he is. But even if he's not, there's still a connection there. They're not just blindly throwing their.
After watching that, Mike, do you feel that, and watching this documentary, do you feel that there's a similarity to the LA Rams going down that route? Young manager, do you see a similarity or is it a completely different thing?
No. Well, that's been their stated strategy. Yeah. I mean, back in 2019, when Josh gave the impromptu interview and answered questions, he said, we realized that it's apples. In fact, he said something about he made like an apples and oranges and apples and bananas. Like he made some sort of comparison where he knew that football was so different than the other sports that they're involved in, but that the strategy of kind of blowing things up, getting a young, talented manager who's kind of learned at the feet of a more kind of experienced, legendary manager type or coach was the strategy to try to get younger players who will be there a long time. And I thought at the time, well, you're being fools for trying to replicate that because football is different. There's no salary cap. There's no draft. There's no cyclical parity that you normally would have in basketball, in hockey, and in football. There's a reason that they don't have a baseball team because baseball, the one sport where you can pretty much spend whatever you want without control. So, I mean, I thought it was a mistake and that they were still looking at it too similarly, but that's clearly what they've wanted to do. And when things finally got so broken with Unai Emery again, not casting aspersions on him, but it was clear that the club was just throwing money. They were doing like what United has been doing for years, and they're like, we got to stop this, rip it up, and start with something new, and we're going to bring in a young talented manager. So yeah, I think that's and now replicating their strategy from all their other franchises and teams, using franchises in air quotes, is starting to look good because their other franchises have had some success. So why not try that strategy? Why not replicate it and then add on the understanding that they hopefully have gained over the last 4 or 5 years of what is different about football than the other sports that they have teams in. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We've gone for 40 minutes and we've still managed to avoid the Aubameyang controversy, and I don't want to avoid that any longer. Lee, I'll start with you. How did you feel it was covered? How enlightened were you by it? And did you leave with a sense of feeling as though there was still more to understand, to make a real kind of genuine opinion on it?
Listen, I think there's loads more issues there than what was there. Like, I tend to think that maybe it was mismanaged slightly as well. Like, when I look at, Barcelona looking to sell him for about 30 million in the next week or so, I think that Arsenal probably could have handled that a little bit better and at least got some money for him, if I'll be honest. I think that they were panicked a little bit because it was in January. It'd been interesting if that would have happened in February, what they would have done, you know what I mean? Like, but because it was in December, maybe that's why Mikel decided to make a stand on it. I don't know, you know what I mean? It just seems like it was convenient timing this was the time to get rid. Why on that misdemeanor and not the hundreds that have gone before that? It was obviously like it was building up. He's not been late more than once. He was probably doing it on a regular basis. So I do see that. You're never really going to find out what was going on. I think at the end of the day, I think, if I'll be honest, and I think that they alluded to it a little bit, that, it weren't good for him to be training on his own. I didn't think that was a good fit. I felt that, then he come in one day and he was isolated from the players. Listen, if you're late, I get that, but was it really fair to be isolating him with everything going on? So I felt that could have been done a little bit better, if I'll be honest. I've got to say that. I felt, but because of what was going on, I thought that Edu, if I'll be honest, was looking to keep him, to get him back into the squad. That did seem to me like that Mikel didn't want to have that. But then I look at it from Mikel's point of view. I do feel that he probably thought that he'd had enough. It was like one misdemeanor too many, which, in management, you've got to understand that as well. I think when you've got a young, impressionable squad as well, if someone's taking the mickey, you don't want the younger players looking at that and thinking, like that. So I think what they'd done would have maybe looked at one of the players, would have looked at each other and thought, well, if they can do that to him, I better make sure my alarm clock's on like every day, like, So I get what was done on it. I felt that it was a lot covered up and everything like that. And I do think, I'd say I do like it or I don't like it. You have like Tuchel coming out and saying, he never had no problems with him. I've never had no worries with him and all that. I bet he did. You know what I mean? Like,
he said it before, though, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm 100% sure. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it'd be interesting if he does go to Chelsea. What does happen from there?
Can I make a financial comment, by the way? When we were trying to sell him, he was a player who had down tools, who wasn't scoring even when he was playing, and was on 300 to 350,000 pounds a week. That's why we couldn't get any money for him.
Oh, yeah, of course. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But why is he going for potentially 20, 25, 30 million pounds now? He's on 180,000 pounds.
Yeah, like wages are.
He took less money to play at Barcelona because essentially we paid his wages for the rest of that year, and he wanted out so bad that he didn't want out so bad that he would play for free. He didn't pull a Willian, which is actually a nice thing that he did for us after being horrible. But he's on 100. So I mean, it literally is on half the money now that he was.
Yeah,
and so
but like, even so, I still think it wasn't done properly. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think Edu
none of it was optimal.
No, I don't think, if I'll be honest, any of them come out of any any good at on that, if I'll be honest. I think like they had meetings and things, what they was really doing. It looked like they didn't really know what they were doing. Listen, it's a situation probably that a very situation that don't happen very often, I suppose. Like, you know what I mean? Right, realistically.
Except like 9.
Realistically, they sacked him, didn't they? That's what they basically done.
Yeah, they basically sacked him. Yeah, the same as they sacked Ozil, the same as they sacked Mustafi, the same as they sacked.
And you know what they done was sacking.
We are a lot better off for it, and I think
100%. I go along with that. Yeah. I think it was better for everybody. You know what I mean? But when people were saying, we're going to find out what goes on about Aubameyang, he was never going to find out, and we never will.
No. We're going to take some quick fire questions from the chat box. So if you've got some questions specifically, of course, about our reactions to the series, don't go, is Tielemans coming? Because we're not answering that. So throw some questions in about the series and we'll tackle them. We'll go to each of you for some quick fire answers. Mike, starting, and we'll go around. Name your favourite moment, in short, in the entire All or Nothing series.
That save that Arteta's son made was amazing.
and the real one.
and the fact that we saw his grill and not Edu.
His grill,
his barbecue. Favorite moment, man. Easy, and it was one that I was told about a week after it happened, and I was sworn to secrecy that I could not talk about. The gerbil couldn't even post anything, and this would have been a great thing for the gerbil to post, which was Stu McFarlane giving the team talk before the Spurs game. I was told by someone who knew firsthand that had happened, and that's why there was so much like craziness after the game with Arteta jumping on him and celebrating with him and stuff, and to see how it happened, and there were some things I was told that didn't make the cut there from that team talk that I think would have been fantastic to see. But yeah, that definitely was my favorite moment because it was finally getting to see something that was supposed to be completely legendary and secret, and it worked. It pumped the team up huge.
Right.
I'm going to say like the second moment with the little boy, I thought was absolutely superb. It showed a light side, a different side of football, and I like the fact that he turned around and said it meant a lot to, that he read the letter. I think that's fantastic. You know what I mean? I just thought it was a fantastic moment.
Absolutely. Raf.
Yeah, I think the team talk, to be honest. I think more just because of the fact that you just didn't know that something like that would happen in such a big game, and he can clearly show that it meant something to him. And it's almost like me having a chance to go in and give them a team talk about how much the North London derby meant to me as a fan, and then them actually winning and then actually giving him like the love afterwards. Like, it just seemed like it meant a lot. I like that when they done the song as well, the North London Forever, and then they went in
the Angel,
yeah, just actually seeing him, and this, obviously you saw his reaction a little bit on TV, but just the fact that they watched it before and then seeing his reaction, it's like, again, you look at it as a fan and think, imagine if I made a song and they were all singing it in the Arsenal Stadium.
Yeah, absolutely.
For those two.
Yeah, there's a few. I really like when they went behind the scenes with Granit Xhaka and went to his home and talked to his family. I thought that was good. Arteta behind the scenes was good. Anything with Edu, I thought was really interesting. I quite like listening to Edu and what he has to say about things, because I think that he can sometimes be one of the most misunderstood people in the club at times, and I think that people have learned a lot more about him in the last year. That's for sure.
What did you think about Xhaka when after the Liverpool sending off, and he was basically blaming
Saka?
And he was like,
it seemed like there was a bit of tongue in cheek going on. It did seem a bit tongue in cheek. What I would say
had debates over how much passive aggressiveness was in there, and how well,
because it was and obviously I don't want to, because he's playing well, so I don't want it to be a Xhaka moan. But Then you don't you think that might be part of his problem? Like,
Yeah,
he kind of felt
absolutely.
a little bit like, no, it's your fault. It wasn't me. I was the last man. So
well, I don't think he was saying it was. I don't think I interpreted that way. I think he was basically trying to justify his decision to take out Jota. And he said, if I hadn't have done that, we would have been 1-0 down. Of course, we drew that game 0-0. So I think, he has a leg to stand on. He didn't in that moment, but I think he theoretically has a leg to stand on in terms of, why he did it. And clearly it was justified because we came out with a 0-0. But I agree with you that there are times where a player needs to take ownership of, what could have potentially been a big error. Like, we didn't hear from him after the Man City red card. Maybe potentially we would have heard something different. And what we did see is his reaction in the dressing room after he was sent off. And you can clearly tell how frustrated and annoyed he was. But I think that Xhaka's never going to change in that regards. I remember the interview he did with the Players Tribune where he basically said he won't change. He will still take players out. He'll still get red cards. He'll still make errors. That's part of who he is. At 30 years of age, 29, 30 years of age, that's not going to change. So that's just part of who Xhaka is. There has been some really, really good questions in the chat that I want to come to more individually. Mike, Irish says, let's talk about the fake fight between Cedric and Laka. I tell you what, obviously we saw the clip in the trailer, but when Laka grabbed Cedric by his face, I was like, what is going on? I got a little bit annoyed at Laka in that moment watching.
Was that the final episode? Was that the one that Lee hasn't seen yet, or did you see that?
Yeah.
I've seen the clip. I've seen the clip on
Speak normally.
On socials.
Yeah. He grabs Cedric, really proper grabs him in the head.
Well, I used to want you to talk about it, not me. So he said, Tom, please talk about it. I mean, I think Lacazette pretty much afterwards was saying, I had a moment of madness. Like I think he took the blame for it. I mean, good for Cedric to stand, for standing up for the academy kid. I mean, that was completely unnecessary tackle on some little. I mean, do we know who the guy was?
I think it was Henry Francis. I think
it's like a moppy kind of redhead, like a redhead.
I think it was Henry Francis. I might be wrong, but I think it was Henry Francis.
No, but yeah, I mean, it's if you think that was the only time that there were people squaring up to each other and training for the entire season, then I mean that just was the one that probably encapsulated the kind of the frustration in the team at the time.
Absolutely. Let's go to Paul, who says Lee is holding the happiest backup player in the Premier League.
Listen, those guys, El Neni, Holding and all that, they're special players. I'll tell you why they're special players, because they've got a mentality that I could never do it, and certain players can do that. If I was ever left out of the team when I played in that, I weren't happy, and I showed that I weren't happy. But there was players in my team and squad that would come in for 2 or 3 games and they knew their place and they'd let out. And when they was in that dressing room, they'd be happy, joking around and all that. And my God, you appreciate them when you finish your footballing career, because if it wasn't for those guys, we wouldn't have won things that we won, and because there were times when they needed to be used. And I think the admiration that I've got for them is incredible. Like the attitude of them is unbelievable. Like El Neni was left out. I think El Neni could have thrown his toys out, when Lokonga come into the team, before him, but actually proved the manager wrong, I think, by coming in the game against Chelsea, and probably should have used him a little bit more, if I'll be honest. But tremendous attitude at those sort of players.
I was going to say, I even like the if you saw when Lokonga, like they were like, oh, your mood's changed, and he was like, it's because I'm playing now. And Eddie was like, what's wrong with you? You're not the only one I play, and just like fix up. And I like that even in Eddie, because I felt like it shows his mentality is like, you're not playing, but still work hard. And it kind of just almost vindicates when Arteta's always saying his attitude in training's always been good, like from the beginning. Even when people wanted Eddie to leave or he didn't look like he had a future at the club.
Who was that?
Eddie Nketiah. He always looked.
As in the man who's made it at Arsenal.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
It looks like, I just think that they've shown, and again, it's probably a little bit scripted, but they look like they have a good mentality in the squad, and you can see why maybe they've been kept around when some
100%
left.
100%, and that's why, because they've got that great attitude. And I think it's a thing that if you get into coaching and you get into management or whatever, they're the sort of guys you appreciate more than your superstars. I'm telling you, because at the end of the day, that your superstars and the players that will want to play week in, week out and all that, are always a little bit selfish and all that. I get that. I was selfish like that as a player, but
you're selfish like that when you go out to a meal with somebody as well.
Well, yeah, you know what I mean?
Don't leave chips on your plate, man.
Bread roll.
That's what
the hungry hip.
But that's what makes a squad. That's what and that's something that you have to build. You have to build that. So you got those sort of players and things like that, And Ronaldo's probably one of the best players I've ever seen, but he's not a happy sub, is he? You know what I mean? Even at 37, 38. But you've got to have players that are. And El Neni and Holding, are those sort of players. Cedric as well, they know their place. They come in there, do their job and go. Eventually they move on. But for a few years, they're happy doing that and should be appreciated a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, but Daniel points out that, El Neni had a very different response about not playing than Holding did. I mean, the original question is Holding the happiest backup? El Neni is like, I don't like not playing, but I've learned to channel it into
I think Holding would be the same, Mike. I think it'd be the same, but I think he knows his ability.
But he said, I think he said the other day though, he said as much as the whole Holdinho thing, the Holdini thing's good, I don't want to be someone that comes on for the last 10 minutes of my whole career. So I don't think anyone. So I think everyone wants to play. Everyone back.
I'll tell you what. If they actually said to one of us, as you as a youngster, right, you're going to go to Arsenal, and you're going to be a squad player and all that. Like there is going to be a time, even though you love the club and all that, when you think, I want a bit of this more often.
The Carl Jenkinson effect.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Eventually, Carl,
becomes your nightmare.
You want to, you've lived the dream, but ultimately, you want to live the dream of a professional footballer, don't you? So I think Holding will whether it be another season, and I think he'll go. But I think he's happy being where he is at the moment. But he won't be it for forever.
Indeed. I'll finish off with the question from Dan Robert. He says, do you think the doc showed a lack of leadership throughout the team? Did not hear Lacazette or Odegaard once. Really? This was kind of the final thing to pick up on. The players are very quiet, and I didn't like that. I'll be honest. I didn't really like how quiet they were.
I think it's a weird one, because I think it's going to be something where I don't know if it's just a change in how football is, where you're not going to get those massive characters in which everyone's screaming and being like the second manager. And that might be the reason. That might be because there's so many coaches. That might be because the coach wants to be the main voice or the key voice. And it might just be the way that their characters are. I don't know. I did find that quite striking though. I didn't feel like anyone was a shout. Only Xhaka really seemed like the one that was a
Ramsdale.
Ramsdale as well. I think even Ben White as well. To be honest, I felt like Ben White was a lot more vocal than I actually thought. Again, more in terms of frustration, I would say.
I think people may have over-egged Gabriel as a potential captain after watching the series.
I don't really see that. I think on the pitch maybe, and it might be a language thing. Who knows? Maybe. But I feel like where they may be leaders, or where I did see leadership from Lacazette, was when Ramsdale was almost in tears when he didn't keep a clean sheet, I think it was, and then Lacazette was the one that came up to him like, "Look, we're with you," or like cheer up type of things, or it might be those little conversations as opposed to the rallying cries that we maybe look at an Adams would have done, or someone like that. I just think football's changed, to be honest, and I just don't think that the leaders in which we know it or we grew up looking at are going to be how we see them now. I think it's a lot more tactical. It's a lot more, can you relay the manager's instructions as opposed to, all right, you're going to galvanize and rally the troops. I think that's going to be more the manager now, to be honest.
Fair enough. I think that, for me, I would like to see them being more vocal. I would love to see it from someone like Odegaard, who's now the official captain, even though I think we all know that Granit Xhaka is still the unofficial captain of Arsenal Football Club. I would like to see it more. But I also think there's a lot of talking that goes on the field. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't see that just didn't make the cut. How you can fit an entire season into 8 40-minute sections is impossible. You're never going to be able to do it. I was disappointed we didn't see more from, say, the Southampton defeat and the Crystal Palace defeat. You know, there was things that I wanted to see from those types of games that we didn't, unfortunately, that weren't in there. But that's what's going to happen. I think what it is, it's enabled us to get a brief glimpse inside. I don't think if you set your expectations to a level where you thought you were going to understand Mikel Arteta's intrinsic tactical knowledge, they wouldn't have released information like that. So that's ever going to be public. It was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to see the more personal side, I think, of some of them, the more raw side of Mikel Arteta in some circumstances, and you know, some of the things that go on behind the scenes that we don't get a chance to look at.
Can I ask one final user question of you, Tom?
Of course you can, mate.
How did it feel to be like the only successful podcaster and journalist that didn't get your voice onto the documentary?
Yeah, look, I'll be very, very honest. I'm a little bit jealous, Mr. Simeon. I knew I wasn't in it because everybody that was in it got. And hold on, a certain someone also was not involved either. Mr. Judges didn't feature.
I said serious journalists and
the least serious people.
That's why I wasn't upset about not being.
I'll be very honest. Like, you know, it would have been great to hear a voice on, but to be honest, of all the people that were on, I'm very good friends with, you know, like Harry and Elliot and Andrew and James, who of course did fantastic well, and Babs, who featured too. Like, you know, there were some really great things I think we saw across it from a fan perspective. I enjoyed the fact they didn't get rid of kind of the negative fan views or the negative tweets and the abuse. I'm glad they showed that in their raw form. So that was great. And so when Harry announced that Mikel Arteta had signed a brand new contract, I was buzzing for Harry. So yeah, over the moon for him. And I checked because he didn't know he was in it, because obviously I had access to the episodes about 4 or 5 days before they came out. So I text Harry like,
did you play them on like 4 times speed just to wait for your voice and then you went back and watched
absolutely
it?
not. It was purely for journalistic
I'm projecting onto Tom what I would have done if I had like a realistic.
I think with Harry hearing it, like you know, he was buzzing. He was buzzing.
That's really awesome for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows? Series 2, fingers crossed.
Maybe
we might make
the Charlton one. You'll be in.
Maybe I'll get into the press conference. The Charlton one.
I'm doing an all or nothing Tom Canton's wedding. So
hey, look, what I will say is I would not have traded being able to go up and speak to Granite and Aaron on that day to talk about the series over getting into the series. I wouldn't have traded it for that.
Shameless plug alert.
I'm just saying, it was an experience that I will not forget very quickly. There are many reasons why, but hopefully it's going to be something that happens more often in the future as well. So we move. Thank you everybody for tuning in to today's show. Absolute pleasure as always. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's not the usual type of content we do, having a quick chat about a documentary, but I think it's been a good conversation. Mike, thank you so much. Give yourself a plug and tell people where they can find you, not just online, but in London as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I hope you enjoy your last 8 days of single life. Looking forward to the big day, and then the second big day a week later, gvclive.com. Go to gvclive.com. We're having a live show with the likes of Sophie Nicolau, Harry Simeon, FK, hopefully Tom. Probably Tom.
I think I've got.
We're going to say definitely Tom right now. And then,
Arsenal have got a press conference that day, so it just depends on.
You're going to see hopefully a freshly married Tom at the Ridley Road Social Club in Dalston, aka Hackney. It's £5 to go, and that's a donation and gets you a raffle ticket. Ruth Beck will be there. It's going to be a fun night. Drinks, Goonerdom, charity, art, podcast, all that good stuff. So please head to gvclive.com. Lee is going to be on holiday, sunbathing someplace.
Missing out.
Put some sunscreen on that kepi of yours. and thanks for having me on, Tom.
No problem at all. If you want to get more information about that live show, as I said, £5 a ticket. Which is a donation, as Mike says, which is, you know, for those that are in our Discord server will know at the moment how important it is to be supporting these charities, especially. So, Lee, thank you so much for your time, my friend. As always, tell people where they can find you and what you're going to be up to.
No worries. I'm out of here for a couple of weeks. I'm going on holiday, so I'm going to be a little bit quieter. But Lee Judges TV, give it a little look. That's where I am. So yeah, and listen, I hope that it's you have a fantastic wedding, and I hope that
Thanks,
that live thing is successful as they always are. And yeah, that's about it, really.
Lovely stuff. Appreciate your time as always, fella. And finally, Raf, thank you so much for coming on the show. As always, pleasure to catch up once again. Tell people where they can find you and what you're going to be up to.
Yeah, Messy Music, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Yeah, I'm putting out more stuff on TikTok and stuff now as well. And Twitter, as always, got an opinion. Yeah,
yeah, all the dances. Yep.
But yeah. I've got Arsenal previews, reactions, all that good stuff. But yeah, follow me.
Lovely stuff. You can find Mike at the Gooners Pod. You can find Lee Judges at Lee Mark, middle name Judges, on Twitter. Absolutely make sure you are, and LJTV, of course, of which you'll find myself and Mike and others galore, of course, appearing at times too. It's a great channel, and he's doing some great stuff, as well as with Dan Potts, who also has his own channel at the 12th Man Podcast. So make sure you go and check all of their stuff out. We will see you again very, very soon, tomorrow morning. In fact, bright and early at 8 a.m. It's been an absolute pleasure to join you, as it always is. And as always, up the Arsenal.